Thank you for joining us today for the editorial board for the Beef and Pork Primary Processing Automation and Robotics Program. I always have to read that because it's such a long name and I don't want to get it wrong. We're just going to go through quick introductions. I'll start with Carrie, and then Nicole and Garson can introduce themselves.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Carrie Wright, the CEO of CAAIN.
Good morning, Nicole Gadat, Program Manager with CAAIN.
Good morning, everyone. Garson Law, also Program Manager at CAAIN.
And I'm Eric Morin, and I'm going to be moderating this morning, though there's not much moderating to do. I will let you know, Nithya and Kyle, that we're recording this. I'll send you copies of the recording so that you have it on file. You don't have to worry about taking notes that way. And there's some other people who couldn't join us today but requested recordings, so I'll make sure that you get that as soon as the session's over. Does anybody have any questions before we get going? Okay, I will share our PowerPoint presentation then, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Eric. Wonderful. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We're really excited about the opportunity to present to everyone the Beef and Pork Primary Processing Automation and Robotics Program, which I may just say Beef and Pork Program as we go forward. A bit of a mouthful, but that was very much on purpose. We wanted to be very detailed and specific because it is such a targeted program. And today we wanted to explain to you a little bit why that is. And Eric, if we can go into the next slide, I just wanted to explain to you some of CAAIN's research priority areas. CAAIN really started in July 2019, and we had the privilege of being awarded $49.5 million from Innovation, Science and Economic Development, the federal government, to be able to really work with the agri-food and technology sectors to drive innovation and productivity using collaborative solutions. Of that money largely goes to programs, and of that money we are required to dedicate $9.5 million to the livestock sector. And now in CAAIN's early days, we have got several programs out the door and into industry, and those are focused into the areas of robotics and automation, data-driven decision making, so utilizing the data to make better decisions, layering data, and just being able to utilize that, whether that's with artificial intelligence or machine learning, but to be able to bring that together in a format to be able to make better decisions. And we also have a platform of smart farms and a network of smart farms that we're hoping to grow right across Canada. And really the meaning and focus of the area of smart farms is really about connectivity. So these are actually operational kind of pilot demonstration sites, if you will, that researchers can use to validate the research that they're working on. They can demonstrate it to farmers, and also they're often tied with academia, and so they're an opportunity for training and learning as well. One of the things that we really wanted to do, knowing that we had this $9.5 million, while we've spent a bit over a couple of million in the area of livestock so far, we knew within our timeline we wanted to make sure that we were able to dedicate the full amount that we were allotted to this sector. And so we wanted to make that very specific. And what we started to do is very early on, I think spring of 2021 is when I was involved also with Nicole in some of the early conversations with industry to really understand what that need really was. And you can go ahead, Eric. When we started to look at all the different areas and aspects that were going on, and certainly since in 2021, COVID was alive and well, and we were really looking at a number of things that were already impacting the sector. Labor has always been an issue, worker safety and the environments, and beef and pork, particularly beef and pork primary processing. There is it's cold, it's wet environment. There's knives. There's a lot of things that are going on in that sector in particular of the beef and pork processing that makes it challenging to to secure and keep labor, make sure that labor is safe. There's a lot of industry consolidation going on. So not unlike the US, Canada has experienced quite a bit of consolidation. We've got 3 kind of major processors, very large processors that aren't even Canadian based. And so that makes us fairly vulnerable. There's a big gap between their small, medium, and the very large, and an opportunity because as well as the focus of areas for our programs, CAAIN is really focused in the small and medium sized sector and being able to support that. So since COVID, of course, too, we've seen a lot of disruption in the supply chain. Food security issues have come to light, as well as price increases. So a lot of the aspects that we went and talked to industry and really wanted to better understand, we're seeing quite exacerbated due to COVID. And the other thing that we really started to understand as well is when these larger plants were shut down due to COVID issues, producers, of course, didn't have anywhere to take their animals. So that became another issue that really affected the farm level as well as right through the supply chain overall. So we really wanted to understand and explore those. We wanted to look at a program that could be targeted to really increase productivity, competitiveness, and efficiencies within this sector, as well as decrease some of the dependence on manual labor and shifting toward automation to create higher skilled positions, as well as increase employee safety and improve quality as well. So when we started to look and talk to the industry, we kind of landed on a specific goal for our program. And Eric, you can go to our goal. And how we landed on this goal, a CAAIN-led initiative dedicated to research, development, and accelerated adoption of automation and robotics for Canada's beef and pork primary processing industry, is we spent time in the spring of 2021 talking to industry, as I mentioned, to better understand some of those key needs, as well as we engaged a consultant to support us in a needs assessment where we looked at global and domestic landscape of what was going on in the beef and pork primary processing sector. We looked at what are some things that are impacting, what are some of the things with stakeholder engagement that some of the processors are looking at doing with automation, and how can we help support them? And while we learned, of course, the bigger, larger processors are going to adopt and look at some of the different opportunities that they can do, the small and medium size are fairly limited. They're limited in a number of ways. In particular, what we found too is as we understand the processing in Canada, fairly aged facility that don't have a lot of space for automation or space for anything as well as automation, that would really challenge this. So we really wanted to look at what are some things that could really specific and target. So within this consultation process, we learned some major key findings, and things that we're really looking at here on this slide is really regarding some aspects surrounding an ability to really reduce labor requirements in processing plants with, of course, the eye of improving the yields. That was a major aspect, of course, but also we were understanding that while some processors were going into a project looking at the ability to reduce labor, one thing that they were really finding that as they were able to be more accurate in their cutting and throughout their processes, they were seeing more profitability, better yield, and even quality because they were being more precise. And in the environment of a meat processing facility, which has very, very slim margins, this is a huge gain. So it was really impactful for them to learn about that. So I think some of the things in our program that we want to see is looking at reducing labor, yes, but also where are some improvements that could be made around yield and quality. We saw some examples of perhaps the ability to increase objectivity in the carcass grading process. Graders are very important part of, and inspectors a very important part of a meat processing facility, but would there be an ability to utilize cameras and visioning systems that could help reduce some of the objectivity around this aspect? improve food and employee safety. Those were very important. And as we've learned from COVID and looking at different ways of testing food variants, diseases, and different aspects, we could maybe be applying some things that could maybe have a quicker turnaround so that people could understand what is going on a lot quicker, and maybe even have the opportunity to do some of the inspection on a remote basis rather than in plant. We wanted to look at adapting automation solutions for medium-sized primary processors. So I mentioned a key aspect that many of the processors that we were in our consultation identified, that space is a huge issue. So what we wanted to, I think, understand is, are there some automations out there that could be right-sized to the Canadian small and medium-sized areas, whether that's inside space, but also in terms of how they operate and the speed of which they operate, and can those be done in an aspect that they have the ROI that is achievable to be able for these companies to invest and see that return in a reasonable time period. And those are all very big challenges, I appreciate, but I think our ability to be able to support a program in this area is one of the reasons that we think this is very well targeted to be able to do this. Another aspect is exploring a robot as a service. So for small and medium-sized processors, a capital expenditure of several $1 million is quite maybe even out of the realm for some of them. And so some opportunities may be that looking at an ability to lease or do a maintenance type of a contract with a robotic arm or a piece of robotics or mechanization that allows them to pay on a monthly basis to see, how does that affect their operations, and what is the return that they could actually see and adopt. So these were really key areas that we saw from our program priorities. And just before Nicole and Garson get into kind of our process here, we kind of took this throughout the year. Through the spring, we had this research done, and in the fall really spent time dedicated to identifying what our program would really look like, and we'll go through those steps. But we had approval by our board to move this ahead and launched it on March 15th, so we're excited to tell you a bit about that process. So I'll hand it over to Nicole.
It's Garson here. I'll jump in with the timelines.
Thank you, Garson.
Sure thing. Thank you. So to get to some of the details of the program itself, we do have a 3-stage process for this program, and as you can see, we launched the program on March 15th. With the first stage, and that's the project registration form. And in this format, it's a fairly straightforward form where we're looking for program eligibility and alignment to the program objectives that Carrie just mentioned. This has a due date of May 2nd. And we'll be looking at some of those items to make sure that everything is in order before sending out the invitations to submit an expression of interest. The expression of interest form itself is due on June 6th, and this will include a little bit more information on the program that is planned, on the project that is to be planned by the applicants, and this will include a review by our technical advisory committee. So it's a panel of experts in various fields in the agri-tech innovation space, and we rely on these experts to review the applications for again program fit and their technical merits. Once those are adjudicated, an invitation will be sent out for submission of a full project proposal, and these will be due during the summer of 2022. This will be a detailed application in which a lot of details on the processes, all the partners will need to be included, as well as a discussion of which each of the partners will bring to the project. These will be due, as I mentioned, in summer of 2022, and will also be reviewed by our technical advisory committee. Finally, the recommendations of this committee are sent to our board of directors for final approval, and this will occur in the fall of 2022 as well. So that is a brief overview of our program timelines. I can mention that some of our key eligibility that we'll be looking at includes cash from at least 2 SMEs, so small medium enterprises consisting of 499 employees or less, with additional cash that can come from other sources such as not-for-profits, MNEs or multinationals, etc. However, because CAAIN works on a reimbursement model from the government, in-kind contributions are not able to be matched by CAAIN dollars, nor can cash from other government sources, with the exception of My Tax student training programs. And as I mentioned, the CAAIN granting model is on a reimbursement model, I should say, at 40% of eligible costs. So that is a quick overview of our programs and timelines. If there are any questions on additional details about the programs or timelines, we can certainly take them now or at a later date.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, but I think that's, you've nailed the issues in the industry very well. Labor is a huge issue, and I think the way forward for the industry is automation. The challenge is, of course, that most of the processors are medium-sized businesses, and so that's where the challenge is to getting them to scale up. And so great work, and I, wish you the best. And I want to, if you can send me some more details about the program, and once the applicants have received and once you finalize who is going to be benefiting from this, yeah, would love to, touch base at that point as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nithya. Lee or Kyle, anybody got questions?
I guess I just have just a very general question, and just in terms of what do you think the biggest challenge is, with this type of a project, this type of research, with this kind of technology, just what the biggest challenge is?
Oh, I can start out. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add, but I would say, Kyle, when we're looking at the food processing and primary processing, I would say one of the biggest challenges is going to be able to identify areas that we can apply automation, because especially, in a pork processing plant, now pork tends to be a little bit more uniform in nature. Beef is less so, and automation loves consistency. So when something's coming in and you're deconstructing it, basically, there's only certain areas I think that can be very efficient in applying automation. So I think it's really understanding some of those areas, and it might be at the very beginning of the processing, and maybe even very much at the end. And what I mean by that is, once things are kind of deconstructed and putting in boxes and organized, that might be a little bit easier for automation to address. Or as we also mentioned on the front end, it might be a very specific cut, the ability to be able to do that, or to view something and be very consistent, whether that be support in grading something, or being able to start to break down an animal in a very precise way. So I think it's going to be very difficult to even start to be able to look at that, and what can that look like for small and medium, to be able to address what those needs are, for one, but also to be able to take some technology and adapt it to a facility that doesn't have a lot of space, is shoulder to shoulder kind of operating. And what you also want to be able to do is perhaps increase some of that value added ability. So those are all a number of things that I think, and I think that's why this program is so well targeted, because we do think that the small and medium sized processors need support in this area. And that's why we think too that if they lag behind in this area and keep falling behind, it's going to be detrimental in the future, and just continue to be so. So I think it's really important for people to start to think about these areas. And advancement could mean a lot of things, but we're really hoping that to support them moving it forward.
All right, thank you.
Leah, do you have any questions? Or are you guys good?
I'm sure I have a question. We find that one of the main topics right now is sustainability in the agri-food world, and I guess automation would make things more efficient, right? So what sort of like sustainability aspects would this look at, I guess?
I think, Leon, that area in particular that where I kind of take this is if we look at sustainability for, in particular, let's look at some of the medium-sized processors. Like we want to, our hope in this is that we could advance, you know, those medium-sized to improve their profitability, improve their efficiency so that they have a stronger business going forward. Because we have such a large gap between the medium-sized and the large players, we hope that by supporting them in moving their businesses forward, that they have improved longevity if we could. And what I mean by that is if they are be able to be more profitable and effective in their business, hopefully that's something that will help sustain them as well going forward. So I think these types of things will be important for them, and if not, it could be fairly detrimental if they don't start to advance their businesses.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, thank you very much for joining us.